300,000 years ago, a human being opened its eyes for the very first time on this planet. And the terrifying part? Nobody, not one single creature on Earth, knew that the most dangerous species in history had just woken up. Not the lion sleeping a few hundred meters away. Not the predators watching from the dark. Nothing saw it coming. Because on that morning, this new creature looked weak. Slow. Easy to kill. And yet within a few thousand generations, it would wipe out every rival human species on the planet, cross oceans it had no boats for, and eventually build cities, weapons, and civilizations powerful enough to end the world itself. This is the story of that first morning. And by the end of it, you're going to look at your own existence completely differently. Let's go back to where it actually started, a place called Jebel Irhoud in modern-day Morocco. In 2017, archaeologists pulled skulls out of the ground here that shattered everything we thought we knew. These bones were nearly 300,000 years old, almost 100,000 years older than scientists had ever placed the first Homo sapiens. Overnight, the entire timeline of human existence had to be rewritten. So picture this: a human, nearly identical to you, standing in the African wilderness 300,000 years before smartphones, before writing, before fire was even fully mastered in every group. No history, no memory of anything that came before. Just a body, alone in a hostile world, with no idea it belonged to a species that would eventually dominate the entire planet. Here's where it gets darker. This creature should not have survived. It couldn't outrun a hyena. It couldn't fight off a leopard. Its claws were useless, its teeth were flat, and its skin had almost no protection at all. By every rule of nature, this was prey. Easy, defenseless prey. So how did something this fragile become the last human species standing? The answer is one word, and it's more brutal than people realize: elimination. Because Homo sapiens were not the only humans on Earth. At the exact same time, Neanderthals were living across Europe. Denisovans were spread through Asia. At least 4 or 5 other human-like species existed simultaneously, all breathing the same air, all hunting the same land. And within roughly 250,000 years, every single one of them was gone. Every single one. We know they interbred. Modern DNA studies confirm that almost every non-African human alive today still carries Neanderthal genes buried inside their own bodies right now, as you're listening to this. But interbreeding wasn't enough to save them. Something about Homo sapiens outcompete, outlasted, and in some theories, outright erased every other version of humanity that ever existed. Stop for a second and sit with that. You're not just descended from survivors. You are descended from a species that won a 100,000-year war it didn't even know it was fighting. Now here's where the story turns almost impossible to believe. Around 70,000 years ago, something happened that nearly ended everything before it even began. A supervolcano called Toba erupted in modern-day Indonesia, one of the largest eruptions in the last 2 million years. Ash choked the skies. Temperatures may have dropped for years. And according to one controversial but widely discussed theory, the entire human population on Earth may have crashed to as few as a few thousand breeding individuals. A few thousand. That's it. That is how close the story of humanity may have come to simply never happening at all. No pyramids, no Rome, no you, nothing. And yet, somehow, in caves and shorelines scattered across Africa, small groups clung on. Somebody's ancestor, sitting in the ash-choked dark, refused to be the one who let it end. One of those groups left behind something that changes how we see them entirely. At a site called Blombo's Cave, in South Africa, archaeologists found pieces of ochre engraved with deliberate cross-hatch patterns, dated to around 75,000 years ago. This wasn't survival. This wasn't hunting or eating or sleeping. This was art. This was a human being on the edge of extinction, still choosing to create something with absolutely no survival purpose at all. Think about that. While the species was one bad winter away from disappearing forever, someone still sat down and made something beautiful. Why would a starving, endangered creature waste time on decoration? Maybe because somewhere in that first morning, 300,000 years earlier, something had already been switched on inside the human mind that no other species on Earth ever had. Not just intelligence, meaning. And that single decision, to create instead of just survive, might be the reason you're capable of feeling anything at all right now. Let's talk about what that first morning actually felt like on the ground. Because it's stranger and lonelier than you'd expect. There was no concept of ancient. No one felt old-fashioned or primitive. To every human alive on that morning, this was simply the present, the only present that had ever existed. They woke up with the sun because there was nothing else to wake up to. No alarms, no roofs, often no walls at all. Just open ground, the sound of wind, and the immediate, non-negotiable question every single morning. How do we not die today? And the answer they landed on is the same answer that built every empire, every nation, every family that would ever follow them. Cooperation. A lone human was food for something bigger. A group of humans, moving together, thinking together, was the most dangerous force nature had ever produced. Fire made it worse or better, depending on how you look at it. Once early humans could reliably control flame, something happened that had never existed before in the history of life on Earth. A fixed point of safety in the dark. For the first time, a creature could sit still after sunset without being eaten. And in that stillness, around that fire, the first conversations that meant nothing at all for survival may have started. Sounds, comfort, something that would eventually become language, storytelling, and every myth ever told after it. That fire never really went out. You're staring into a version of it right now. Here's the detail that should genuinely unsettle you. For roughly 95% of the time Homo sapiens has existed on this planet, absolutely nothing that we call history had happened yet. No writing, no kings, nowhere we've ever heard of. Just thousands of generations of humans, waking up, surviving, and dying completely unknown to us, their names and faces gone forever, with only scattered bones and a few engraved rocks left behind to prove they ever existed at all. Every single one of your ancestors, going back through every one of those generations, survived long enough to have a child who also survived. One broken link anywhere across 300,000 years, one bad hunt, one Toba eruption gone slightly worse, one Neanderthal encounter ending differently, and none of what you're watching right now would exist. Not this video. Not you. So here's the question I want to leave you with, because I genuinely don't think there's a clean answer. If Homo sapiens really did outcompete, interbreed with, and ultimately erase every other human species that ever existed on this planet, what does that actually say about the species you belong to? And if it happened once already, in complete silence, over hundreds of thousands of years without anyone noticing it happening in real time, what makes you so sure it isn't happening again, right now, in some form we haven't even recognized yet?